Good morning, everyone. I would like to call to order the Teachers Retirement Board for November 7th, 2024. Can we do roll call, please?
Of course. For the Director of Finance, Ms. Peralt. Mr. Keeley.
Present.
Mr. Tang.
Present.
Ms. Yamamoto.
Here.
Ms. Hendricks.
Here.
Mr. Gunning.
Here.
For the State Treasurer, Mr. Rufino.
Present.
For the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Mr. Garfinkel.
Here.
Chairperson Bradford to have a quorum, and I have a short statement.
Please.
The CalSTRS board meetings are live, web-streamed, video archived, and available to the public on calstrs.com. Individuals who wish to address the board should wait for the 10-minute public comment period at the end of the agenda item the speaker wishes to address. For comments not pertaining to a specific agenda item, there will be an opportunity for additional statements at the end of the open session. Each speaker is allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to comment. However, if there's not enough time for each speaker to have 3 minutes, the timing will be at the discretion of the chair. To protect the privacy of speakers under the age of 18 who wish to address the board, only their first name and affiliated organization may be provided, but other personal identifying information, such as their last name, age, or school, may not be shared. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 1 is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Without objection, we will approve the agenda. Okay, agenda has been approved. I do not see minutes on here. I just want to check with you, Jennifer. Is there a reason?
They are at the consent agenda at the end.
Oh, they're on the consent agenda. There we go. Thank you. Okay, item number 2, our Chief Executive Officer report.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Chair Bradford and the members of the board. I have a couple of updates that I wanted to provide to you. One is, or several of them are recognitions of some of the accolades that the organization has received. First, our CalSTRS Investment Office received 2 important accolades recently that I'm happy to share with you. Scott Chan was recently named one of the Elite 100 CIOs by Markets Group, which provides forums for investment management and asset allocators to engage on important topics. Scott is among this strong group of leaders who have demonstrated remarkable resilience and foresight. He was chosen because of his leadership, vision, and significant contributions to the investment industry. And in addition, CalSTRS received the Randy Kim Prize for Fiduciary of the Year, given out by the With Intelligence and the Allocator, a market industry publication that provides insight into the, the investment marketplace. The award was given to CalSTRS CIOs Chris Ellman and Scott Chan with this impressive write-up. This award goes to CalSTRS to recognize their steady, consistent stewardship of the second largest public pension in the U.S. despite huge levels of public scrutiny. Scott accepted the award on behalf of CalSTRS in New York on October 17th amongst a room filled with industry peers and partners. So please join me in congratulating the investment colleagues, our investment colleagues, for being recognized for their continued excellence and strong leadership. So. A couple of other recognitions I wanted to mention was the CalSTRS Annual Comprehensive Financial Report for year-end June 30th of 2023 was awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting by the GFOA of the U.S. and Canada. This achievement is the highest form of recognition in governmental accounting, which really speaks again to the excellence of reporting that our financial services conducts, as was mentioned in the ARM committee yesterday. CalSTRS also received the GFOA's award for outstanding achievement in the popular annual financial reporting for this same period. So congratulations to our financial services unit. And finally, I wanted to mention some recognitions that our communications team has received. They have done an excellent job, as we all have witnessed over these past few years, in the maturity of the content that is being presented throughout the internal communication team at CalSTRS. This team received two 2024 Influence Awards from the Public Relations Society of America's California Capital Chapter. One was in their strategic planning team content, and the other was for the video content in our CalSTRS Voices series. So congratulations, communications. The last thing I wanted to have David Lamro actually come up and report on is just to give you a quick update on the SBMA process. Thank you, David.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to see all of you. Yeah, I just want to give you a little update on SBMA. So as you know, SBMA right now is designed to provide 85% purchasing power to our members. And again, last year in fiscal year 23-24, inflation came in a bit higher than historical averages. We were about 3.3%. So because of that, this year we added about 40,000 new members who receive SBMA for the first time, bringing our total number of recipients about 143,000. But what I wanted you to pay attention to is the table on page 5. It was an interesting year. Generally, in the past, we always gave you this clear picture that said, oh, those who retired before 2005, for example, receive SBMA. This year was an interesting year because if you go back in time during the financial crisis in 2008 and 09, we actually had deflation in California. Inflation was negative. It was negative 1.5. From a purchasing power perspective, when this happens, someone's purchasing power goes up because we give them a 2% annual benefit adjustment every year. So all of a sudden for them, for someone who retired in 2008, for example, in their first year of retirement, their purchasing power went up because inflation was negative and they receive a benefit increase. So those individuals are seeing their purchasing power fall. They have a higher purchasing power than some who have retired at a different time. Another thing I want you to be aware as well, when it comes to the 2% benefit adjustment, you have to, if you retire before September 1st, so let's say you retire on August 30th of this year, 2024, you will get your first 2% benefit adjustment next September 1st. If you retire this year on September 2nd, you have to wait an extra year. So those who retire generally in September, October, November, and December have to wait one extra year to get their first 2% benefit adjustment. What does that mean? Their purchasing power falls, they lose purchasing power quicker than someone who retired in August because they have to wait an extra year. So because of these things, it gives us what you see on page 5. It's this, where right now, someone who retired in 2008, regardless of the month, for example, they have yet to fall below 85% purchasing power, while you have someone who retired, let's say, in December of 2016, they've fallen just below 85%. So this year is a little weird, is we have individuals who retired as recently as 8 years ago who are receiving SBMA, while someone who retired in January of 2008 has yet to receive SBMA. So it's a little bit, originally we were expecting we might get more phone calls in our call centers. We've been told we haven't received that many calls. We've provided this particular table to our staff at the contact center. If they have questions, they're able to provide the information. But I just want you to know. And also, many of these individuals who receive SBMA for the first time are not receiving a larger amount because they fell just below the 85% threshold. In fact, of all of the individuals who receive SBMA for the first time, we had about 30,000 of them receive less than $100. And we have a chart, if you're curious to see, there is a chart on page 4 that shows you kind of distribution of the payments. So that's all. I just wanted you to be aware of kind of this interesting year when it comes to who is receiving SBMA this year, because it's a little bit all over the place, as you can see on page 5.
Thank you. Anyone have questions?
I do.
Go. Okay, let me.
Did I press it?
Just turn your mic on.
Okay, it's on. It's on. So when I look at this chart, does that mean that it changes as to who's getting the SBMA, the purchasing power amount?
Changes it.
Okay, so for instance, the 2008 is there's nothing there.
Correct,
right?
because right now their purchasing power is above 85%.
Right.
Correct.
So does that mean like next year?
They could
they have
yes,
that
correct. So
possibility?
the process that we follow is we wait each year around mid-August.
Okay.
Department of Finance will issue inflation for the year. Then we redo this calculation once a year.
Okay.
So next year it's likely going to change depending on inflation.
All right. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear to me and everybody else.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're good.
Thank you, that's all I had. Now you can see why I had David come up and report on that part of the report. That's it, thank you.
I just want to go back to your comments, Cassandra, and thank all of our staff. We appreciate the awards, and we appreciate everybody behind the awards, and that makes us look good up here and briefs us on everything and keeps us up to date. And we're all very thankful that we get to work with you. I also wanted to point out, if you were not here yesterday or online yesterday, you might want to go and check out the Teacher Spotlight. It was very moving, I thought, as usual, and our communications department did a wonderful job as always, so thank you for that. Okay, on to item number 3, action items. Adoption of our 25-26 operating budget. Good morning, Julie.
Any comment?
Go ahead. Oh, there you go.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I apologize. I have a quick question on the previous item before we move on, and it might be a question for Lisa, not Cassandra. I know in the item you guys talked a little bit more about what's happening in the new building and the leasing. Can you just give us a really brief, like, are we close? Do we have people locked in? I know this is a question we continue to kind of monitor, and I know across the region, this has been a bit of a bigger lift than I think we would have liked it to have been going into COVID. But can you, I mentioned it a little bit, but are we feeling like we're moving in the right direction? Do we have anything locked in? If you can just.
We don't have anything locked in, but we are in negotiations with 3 different entities. One is a state entity that's wanting 2 full floors of our space for 10 years. And that one is probably further along than any of the others, which we're really excited about. And then we have another private entity that we actually do business with that also is looking for 1 full floor. And so we're in various stages of negotiations. But I will tell you, the one state entity, we actually are in the process of doing a test fit. So that's getting us closer to final negotiations with our lease. They've already agreed to all the terms. So now it's just a matter of looking at the test fit and finding out what the tenant improvement would cost. So we are moving along in that way, and we're getting more and more interest. So I think that things are starting to change a bit. Yeah.
Of course. Good morning.
Hey, Chair Bradford, members of the board. I'm Julie Underwood, Chief Financial Officer, and we are requesting approval of our 25-26 operating budget in the amount of $421.1 million. This is a $187.4 million decrease over the prior year. The budget includes 1,431 authorized positions, and that is an increase of 30 positions over the prior year. Now, the operating budget before you today is $2 million higher than the budget I brought you in September to review. That is due to an addition of $2 million for administrative expenses. That's for additional expenses we expect for the pro rata assessment that's issued by the Department of Finance. We were notified in mid-September that the retiree health benefit was going to be increasing by almost 11%. So we needed to add that $2 million to account for that increase. And those are for employer-paid benefits for retired staff. But otherwise, there are no other adjustments that were presented to you in September. So let me go back. Uh-oh, what did I do?
There you go.
Back up, please.
Here we go.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so just to quickly recap, in the budget, there are some increases for administrative expenses in the amount of $7.7 million. That's for employee compensation and pro rata assessment. We have $4.4 million. That's the multi-year plan that the board approved to support the collaborative model. That is in its 5th year and will provide 15 positions. We have $3.7 million for technology expenditure increases. And then we have $2.6 million for 15 administrative positions, of which 12 of those were brought on early to comply with new legislation for AB 1667 and AB 2019. There's 1 position for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then 2 positions for innovation to support those 2 initiatives. Then all of those increases are completely offset by a one-time reversal of prior year expenses for the Pension Solution Project in the amount of $205.8 million. That gets you to the net $187.4 million decrease in the overall budget compared to prior year. Just a quick reminder, your approval today also includes our annual standard request to provide us with some flexibility should we encounter some unanticipated expenditures, and those authorities are outlined on page 5 of this item. So with that, I'll stop there, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I think you've done such a good job. We have no questions.
Okay, great.
We did do some briefings.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you.
Okay, Ken has moved approval.
I'll second.
Michael has seconded. I think we need to roll call this one.
Yes, please. Ms. Pearl? Ms. Gallegos? Mr. Keeley?
Aye.
Mr. Tang?
Aye.
Ms. Hendrick, Ms. Yamamoto?
Aye.
Ms. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Gunning?
Yes.
Mr. Rufino?
Yes.
Mr. Garfinkel?
Aye.
Chairperson Bradford?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you.
I skipped public comments on the last two. Are there any public comments?
There are no public comment for this item.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Okay, that brings us to item number 4, state and federal legislation. Joycelyn.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Joycelyn Martinez-Wade, Director of Governmental Relations. So this morning, I'm going to start with an update on state legislation, and after we've completed that, including the action item, I'd like to move to an update on the federal legislation to kind of keep things together. I know there's a public comment for the update on federal legislation. So to start, excited that there was one last bill that we had to report back the disposition on at the end of session, the end of the signing period in September. And so that's AB 1997, our sponsored bill on simplification of our credible compensation and credible service laws. So the governor did sign that bill, which is very exciting. We worked very closely with our member groups, active, retired, the employer community, and our partners there. And we had a coalition letter that went into the governor's office requesting signature with 15 different organizations on it. It really worked out. And so I'm really glad the governor's office engaged, the government operations office engaged. So wonderful to report back that that bill was signed. And then now we are looking forward to it being implemented by July 1st, 2027. And we'll be working toward that. And so Jeff Zimmer's joining me today to get into that a little bit, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Jeff Zimmer, Director of Employer Services. Joycelyn was nice enough to let me make a cameo this morning to give a little history about where we arrived with AB 1997. In 2021, I presented to the board about a project called the Employer Reporting to Final Benefit Project. And it was sponsored by Lisa and Cassandra, and it was a cross-functional effort to look at all the ways that we can ensure more accurate reporting from our employers and what we do internally in terms of controls and quality to get to more accurate member benefits. And we have had a lot of improvements from that. I presented at the Benefits and Services Committee about some of the things Employer Services has done in terms of establishing a quality and risk management team to look at the quality control over the responses that we provide to employers to ensure they're accurate and meet our standards, and expanding the methodology of our compensation review unit to look at benefits before they start. So sample members before they retire, to ensure there's no problems with their account and so that their benefit can be more accurate. So those are all ongoing, and we're seeing benefits from those already. When we worked on the Employer Reporting to Final Benefit Project, we knew that the big swing and the real innovative approach to get to the root cause of these problems was to address the complexity of compensation reporting law. That's what we hear a lot from our employers, and that was where we thought the most return on investment would come from. So we dedicated resource, like Joycelyn said, resources, very smart and capable people, outreach to our stakeholder groups to really look at how can we make this simpler and more clear so that everyone understands what the reporting needs to be. So we're at a place now, we were cautiously optimistic that the governor would sign the bill and then it would move through the stages. So we've already been thinking about training and about changes to Benefit Connect. We're already thinking about what we have to do to change the requirements and some of the design of Benefit Connect to be ready for July 1st, 2027, which is sooner than you think in terms of a system life cycle. So we're already on that. So we've already begun planning for that. And I think the most important and really the most interesting part of the training that we're going to do is it is a clean slate. So we're all starting from the same place in terms of these new rules. There's other law, of course, that we're still subject to. We're not changing everything, but in terms of these rules that are most important to employers, it's an opportunity to do outreach to the employers, of course, but with unions and with members. So everyone understands what these rules mean and what compensation is reportable and where it goes when it comes to a member's benefit and DBS versus DB, defined benefit, supplement versus defined benefit, all of those things. We're very focused on this opportunity to do that outreach, and we have to revamp the entire training curriculum, start from zero. And really, it's an opportunity to look at all of that all at once, and again, ensure that everyone understands what these rules are. So a lot of effort is going to be going into that. So that's what Joyce and Message is. We've already been thinking about that and the plans for changing their curriculum. We have to teach two things at once, kind of like we're still beholden to the current law, but we have to get everyone ready for the new one as well. So there's a lot of change coming, but we're aware of it and we're treating it as an opportunity to give everyone the same message so we all are clear and consistent on what these rules mean. So I just wanted to give a little background of all the efforts that came from that project 2 years ago that we've been working on, and this is the one that had the longest duration and the most effort and the most support from our stakeholder groups to ensure that we passed the bill and that we're able to change these rules. So a little bit of history, and I appreciate your time. Thank you, Joycelyn.
Thank you. Thank you. Question?
Well, one of the next steps then, and this will help with some of the pieces that Jeff was talking about, is the regulatory proposal that's in your package, the board package. And so what we're looking for here is approval to initiate the preliminary rulemaking activities. So there's some pieces of 1997 where the details were not in the statute, and so we need to include those in the regulations. We also do have existing regulations on creditable compensation that need to be updated, as well as class of employees, which affects how things are organized for creditable compensation. And then we also have appropriate crediting of contributions, some of what Jeff talked about, so we'll need to update those regulations, as well as when employers do report for this bill, they report through an electronic file format. And so they'll of course be shifting into that with the new system under Pension Solution, but then when that is reprogrammed, they'll need to have these new components as part of that. So we have regulations that need to be updated there. So that's the request today, is approval to begin that process.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a question. When you talk about engaging with stakeholders and developing an internal drafting team, could you just speak a little more to the engaging stakeholders at this step? What would that look like?
Sure. We reach out to the parties that would be affected or feel the impacts of it. So we have a strong network of groups that we work with all the time on all of our different pieces. So we worked with them already on this legislation. Now we'll work with them on the regulations, but also like our housekeeping bills, anything that we work on. So this would include member groups that would be unions, active member groups, retired member groups, associations that would be at the K through 12 and community college level, county superintendents, at the also administrators. So it's all different groups and levels. So a large part of the education community.
Thanks.
Of course.
I don't want to speak for Jeff, but I know that there's also plans in place to have the same groups present on this material once we do have regulations, right? So that people understand.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're planning to come to Benefits and Services Committee in January to do a deeper dive on what the rules are and what they mean. So we'll be presenting that. And definitely, there's no shortage of opportunities to do outreach, and we want to again meet with unions, with employers. We have a lot of work to do, but again, it's all for the good of everyone understanding what this means. And again, it's for the better.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions up here. Are there any public comments on item number 4?
We do have public comment on item 4. If we could get a 3-minute timer, please.
I believe that comment is on the federal legislation. So if we want to pause for just a moment on that.
You want to pause, Susie, till we get to that? I was kind of looking for if anybody wanted to talk about this before we have a vote. Okay, Michael has moved it and Sharon has seconded that we start the rulemaking process.
Ms. Peralt?
Aye.
Ms. Gallegos? Aye. Mr. Keeley?
Aye.
Mr. Tang?
Aye.
Ms. Yamamoto?
Aye.
Ms. Hendricks?
Yeah.
Mr. Gunning?
Yes.
Mr. Rufino?
Yes.
Mr. Garfinkel?
Aye.
Chairperson Bradford?
Yes,
The motion passes.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
On the federal side, we have HR 82, which is the weapon GPO repeal bill. And so there was a discharge position, I believe that had happened the last time we met, but where 218 people sign off on that, Congress members, not any people. And then it is discharged from committee and it can be heard on the floor. And there are time limits associated with that, or timeframes associated with that. So the way that worked out was right before the recess and the election. And so there was a pause there, and I think there was anticipation that that bill would be heard once the membership returned to the lame duck session, so after the election. There were some maneuvers that took place, I believe, on election day, so I think that that path has narrowed down and is more difficult now. So I know the public comment, I'm sure we'll get into more details, but I wanted to let you know about that.
Okay. No comments here? Okay.
Thank you.
We're ready for our public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Susie Dixon. I'm the president of CalRTA, and as you know, CalRTA has been working with a lot of stakeholders on getting this repeal done. And as was said earlier, on Tuesday, Election Day, at 5 o'clock, an election from Representative Andy Harris of Louisiana, who was speaking as Speaker Pro Tem during the pro forma session, overstepped his authority, recognizing Representative Bob Good from Louisiana and accepting a table to motion H.R. 82. Now, this is from the two authors. I met with them yesterday. According to the House rules of nearly 200 years, legislative business cannot take place during pro forma session unless specifically authorized by the minority leader, which did not happen in this case. Specifically, it seems that parliamentary procedure was not followed, and significant consequences to this bill have happened. By being in close contact with both Graves and Spanberger, I'm meeting with them tomorrow with key stakeholders on a Zoom, and they are looking at how they can have this solved. They've been assured by Speaker Johnson, who was supposedly livid that this was done behind his back, that this will be taken care of. Interestingly, H.R. 82 is on the schedule for Tuesday night at 6:30. So we're kind of still juggling what's going to happen. Representative Scalise put it on. So I am going to be in DC on Monday with many other organizations. We are walking all to 330 co-sponsors in the House, the 60 plus in the Senate, and leaving a hand note that they need to honor their commitment. As president of CalRTA, I continue to work with these organizations, and I'm living by this principle. It's hard for me to say after Tuesday. Life's greatest achievements often come from our toughest challenges. When obstacles appear in our path, we need to step forward. No matter how small we think it is, it can bring us closer to our goals. Difficult moments are not signs of defeat, but rather opportunities to grow more resilient, keep pushing forward, and trust in our strength. Never give up, never say no. Because the moment we feel like quitting is often the moment that great things happen. I say this to all our CalRTA members. It is time. I said this in my classroom. We learn from our mistakes, but we have to keep going. So thank you, and I hope you all have great news from me on Monday.
Thank you for that. We needed that, Susie. Thank you.
Dana?
Good morning. This mic is tall. Dana Dillon, CTA NEA retired president. I can't say it any better than Susie did. NEA has been a long-standing proponent of repealing the offsets. They are part of the coalition that Susie talked about. As soon as I got here yesterday morning, Susie and I kind of conferred. I got a hold of NEA. NEA is on top of it as well. It's really an unprecedented situation, and we hope we come out on the winning side. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. I just want to add to that the work is definitely being done across the U.S. I was at a trustee event in Boston and met one of our fellow teacher trustees who is also working with Susie. So the loop is closed throughout the US. There are a lot of people working on this, and we thank you all because it means a lot to a lot of people. Joycelyn, do you have anything else for us?
Thank you very much.
Okay, Jeff, thank you both very much for all your work. When we started, I neglected to recognize someone. So we all need to congratulate Ms. Karen Yamamoto on her presidentship for NCTR. Thank you for taking that on. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, on to number 5, item number 5, informational item, review of CalSTRS basic financial statements. Good morning. Let's see.
All right. Good morning, members of the board. I'm Art Martinez. I'm the Director of Financial Planning, Accounting, and Reporting. And I'm here today with Banky Fatunla, who's our Assistant Director over Financial Reporting and Investment Accounting. So today we're going to provide you a brief overview of the fiscal year 23-24 financial statements. And so we're happy to start off with saying that we received an unmodified opinion from Crowe, our external auditors, yesterday. That essentially means, well, it's generally referred to as a clean opinion, but essentially means that the financial statements are free of material misstatement and prepared in accordance with accounting and financial reporting standards. In addition to that, this is the second year in a row that they haven't noted any deficiencies during the course of their audit, and they didn't issue a management letter. So it's something that we're extremely pleased with, proud of. It's a great accomplishment for the organization, and it couldn't have been done without the hard work and dedication of Banky's team and a lot of other people within the organization that make the preparation of the financial statements a priority, a high quality set of financial statements a priority. So I just want to thank everybody that was involved in the financial reporting process this year. We greatly appreciate all the hard work and the dedication. So with that said, although we're extremely pleased and proud of the accomplishment, we just want to assure the board that we're not complacent, we're not going to become complacent, and that we're going to continue to focus on our, our internal controls and our processes to ensure that we continue to prepare quality financial statements that are timely and accurate. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Banky, and he's going to walk you through the financial statements and some of the numbers.
Thank you, Art. Yeah, so I wanted to start off with an overview of the financial reporting process. So the financial statements, the preparation of those are really a year-round process and involve a wide array of people across the organization. The financial statements capture every transaction or every interaction we have really as an organization, and it captures things from the simplest procurement to the most complex investment transactions. As such, there's several robust controls and processes that we have in place to ensure the completeness and accuracy of the information presented in the financial statements. Now, throughout the year, we evaluate new accounting guidance, changes in legislation, or new transactions to determine their impacts to CalSTRS and to ensure that they are accurately reported in the financials in compliance with US GAAP. And our external process starts really, external reporting process starts with the preparation of our third quarter financial statements, which serves more or less as a dry run where, a lot of the changes and new accounting guidance or other transactions that we've been working on throughout the year, we try to have those implemented within the third quarter financial statements, and we provide those to our external auditors, Crowe, during their interim procedures, and that gives them a chance to look at those financial statements and the approach that we took with whatever those items may be. And so it kind of gives us a good start. And once those are prepared and between that time and the year end, we go into other procedures, closing our books for the fiscal year end, preparing reconciliations and other things to ensure that the information is accurate. Finally, once we prepare the financial statements, the basic financial statements that are presented to you today, We also use that information in the preparation of other statutorily required financial statements that the State Controller's Office requires of us. We include the basic financial statements as part of the annual comprehensive financial report, which will be prepared in December and submitted to the GFOA as part of their award program. So now I would like to provide an overview of the financial statement report, which is comprised of 4 sections. The first being the management discussion and analysis, which provides an introduction to the financial statements and also provides a readable analysis of the financial activities of CalSTRS throughout the fiscal year. The next section is the basic financial statement that includes the statement of fiduciary net position, which serves as a balance sheet and shows our assets and liabilities as of the year end. And then the statement of changes in fiduciary net position, which is akin to an income statement that you might see on a private entity's financial statements. And this provides details of the inflows and outflows of the system, such as contributions coming in, benefits payments being paid out, investment returns, and so on and so forth. The next section is the required supplementary information, and that is a set of reports or schedules that are required by US GAAP relating to the net pension liability and the net OPEB liability. The net pension liability being for the State Teachers Retirement Program, or the STRIP, and the OPEB liability relating to the Medicare Premium Payment Program. Lastly, we have the other supplementary information schedules, which provide details on administrative and investment expenses. So with that, I would like to highlight a few key or noteworthy figures within the financial statements and changes to those figures during the year. So as of June 30, 2024, the net position of the STRIP was $341 billion. Now, what I'll point out here is that the information on this slide discusses the STRIP, or the State Teachers Retirement Plan, which is our largest plan. It comprises the Defined Benefit Program, the Defined Benefit Supplement Program, the Cash Balance Program, and the Replacement Benefit Program. These figures are different from what you have in item 5, and that's because what's in item 5 covers all of CalSTRS, but this slide discusses the STRIP, which constitutes about 99% of CalSTRS balance. So as I said, net position was $341 billion as of June 30, 2024. And that was an increase of approximately $24.1 billion from the prior year. And the primary driver of that increase were the positive investment returns of the STRIP. The investment portfolio, on a money-weighted return basis, had a return of 8.3%. And the increase in the investment assets and the net investment income is as a result of these positive returns. The other items on presented here include the total contributions for the plan, and those increased by $1.5 billion, or 9%. And the reason for the increase was the increase in the number of active members and the amount of credible compensation, as the rates for the plan for the member, employer, and state contribution rates remain fairly constant or didn't change, but the increase in the active member population resulted in this increase. Lastly, the benefit payments increased by $800 million, or 4%. And that was due, again, to increase in the STRIP retirees and their beneficiaries, and also the annual benefit adjustment that is added to benefit allowances on an annual basis. This is a fairly consistent change. We've seen the benefit payments increase about 5%, 4 to 5% every year. So this is consistent with what we've historically seen. Excuse me. Moving on, wanted to bring attention to the money-weighted return of the STRIP. The GASB requires that we disclose this. This measure is an accounting measure. It's different from the time-weighted return, which is presented or reported by the investment branch. What you know here is the return here for the money-weighted return was 8.3%, which is different from the 8.4 time-weighted return reported by the investment branch. And the difference here is that the money-weighted return, again, is required by the GASB, and it's calculated in a different way. It includes and considers the impacts of cash inflows and outflows, such as benefit payments and contributions, whereas the time-weighted return is based on investment industry practices and does not include or consider the impact of these cash flows. Another key figure that was reported in the financial statements, and I believe there was quite some discussion about this yesterday as well, is the net pension liability of the state teachers retirement plan. The chart here shows the total pension liability, the fiduciary net position, and then the resulting net pension liability. As of June 30, 2024, the net pension liability was $67.2 billion. And what you see on the chart here, which shows the liability over the last 10 years, is a steady increase in the NPL. But the NPL has fluctuated because of fluctuations within the assets, the fiduciary net position. It's important to note that there's a slightly difference here between this figure presented here and what's used in the valuation for the defined benefit plan, or the DBS and the CBS, and that's because the strip here, the liability here, includes all those programs, whereas we prepare valuations for those other individual programs. And there's some other slight differences between the requirements of the GASB and how the liability is calculated. It's also important to note here again that this liability is presented in our financial statements, but we don't record that balance on our balance sheet. That's something that's reported by the various employers and the state of California. Lastly, as I mentioned, year-round, we're looking at all the different accounting standards and anything that might require us to change the way we account or our accounting, our financial reporting. And this slide presents the various accounting standards that are on the horizon. None of these are expected to be significant to CalSTRS. The first one on the list here is the GASB 101, which deals with the accounting and financial reporting for compensated absences, such as sick leave or vacation time. And the next one, GASB 102, it relates to certain required disclosures around risks or government vulnerabilities related to constraints or concentrations within the government's operations. And lastly, the GASB 103 aims to improve certain aspects of the reporting model, and that's going to be effective in June 30, 2026. As I noted, we do not expect any of these to be significant to CalSTRS. With that concludes my prepared remarks, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Sure.
I could see you thinking.
Well,
Okay,
I guess, for those of us who aren't accountants or don't deal with financial, I'll just ask the obvious question, which is, as you're presenting this item, what, if you were us as a board, what's the high level piece for us to take away from in terms of understanding these accounting standard updates? Like, what's relevant for us to be sure we know or understand?
What I would say is, again, looking at if there's anything significant to us in terms of the way we prepare our financial statements. It could, if there's something significant enough, it could impact the number of resources that we need to deploy, or there might be certain technology we need to purchase to be able to capture the information. We might need to change certain controls within our organization. So those are the things that I would look for. When there's anything significant, it creates more risk of us, not getting it right. And so just making sure that we have we have sufficient resources and we have the right people or the right capabilities to be able to address those reporting needs.
Great. And we feel like that's the case for us right
correct.
now. We have the appropriate staff. I think that's the 30,000 foot question, right? Is we have the right staff, the right level of support to be able to do what we need to do. Okay, thank you.
Karen?
Hi, thank you. That's a lot of information. On your last slide, you said that these standards will not affect CalSTRS. Does that mean that we're already doing it, or there's a way to work to meet the requirements?
Yeah,
I wasn't sure I understood that part.
Yeah, so we started the preliminary evaluation of them and understanding what it entails. Some of these, so for example, GASB 101, it changes the standards around reporting for compensated absences.
Mm-hmm.
But we already do some of that accounting already.
Okay.
And dollar-wise, it may not be a large number in relation to our size.
Okay.
So we make these various evaluations and determine whether we need to change the way we're reporting things. So that's what I meant is, based on what we've seen so far, we don't expect them to have any significant change on
No big changes.
the way we report things.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's kind of what I thought. So.
Yeah, good shade. Okay, are there any comments from the public on item number 5?
There are no public commenters in queue.
Oh, one more question. Harry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not a question. I just want to congratulate Julie and the team and Banky and Art, your presentation and the Crow report. I think if this was a paper, we'd receive an A for the year. So well done. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wait, you're in there again. Are you like hitting the button? You keep I know.
Not sure of investment.
Okay, item number 6 with our favorite actuaries, review of the funding levels and risk report.
Okay, so here we go. Actuaries following accountants.
Quite a day for us today.
What a day. Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
So Rick Reed, System Actuary. So we're going to present our annual review of the funding levels and risk. And what we're really going to do is take a look at the major risks that can affect and keep us from getting from full funding. It is a big year because, as you recall, 10 years ago, CalSTRS had a funding plan put in place, and it was many years in the making.
10 years.
And it's been 10 years since that has happened. But if you look at it in detail, the funding plan was to last for 30 years, and 30 years is a long time to pay off a debt, but it was necessary because of the size of the debt. So 30 years would be 2044. So how did it get to 2046? Well, when they were discussing it, the employers, many of them said, we're not prepared yet for increased funding, so increased contributions. So the legislature delayed everything 2 years. But what happens when you delay it 2 years here in the actuarial world, everything goes up at least 7%, because we assume that when the debt is paid, that money is invested, and we make the actual earning rate. When you don't, then the lack of investment return is added on to the debt. So as we waited from 2014 to 2016, everything increased by 7% per year there. So we went even deeper into debt. And then on top of that, when the funding plan started, employers were not making the full actuarial rate. The state also had to get ratcheted up. The only people that paid their full share at the beginning in 2014 were the members. So keep that in mind. They started right away. State employers had some delay in ratcheting up the contribution levels. And so they're where they should be now. But at the beginning, that's it. And so today we're going to look at the funding of the plan and review the risk of the plan. And because 30 years is a long time to 2046, lots of things can go wrong. And so we're going to ask David to go into detail and explain where we are and what the risks are and examine it. So I'm going to turn it over to David.
Thank you, Rick, and good morning, everyone, again. So, as you know, you've seen this report for several years. We've started to do that in 2015. And again, it's a report where, as Rick mentioned, we focus on the risks that could prevent us from reaching full funding. And again, the three main risks that we've been monitoring for the last decade, and we keep monitoring: investment risk. This is tied directly to our 7% assumption. Each time we beat it, we get further ahead of schedule. When we don't meet it, we fall back a little bit. So that's why we keep an eye on it. Longevity risk, if you paid attention to, on one of the slides that Banking Art presented before, it showed we paid $19 billion in benefits last year. That's why longevity is so important, because even if our members keep living longer than we assume, just a single year means now we have to come up with $19 billion of additional money. So that's why we keep an eye on it. But we think we're in a good place there. And the last one, the membership and payroll growth mix risk, again, it was highlighted in the previous presentation. If you got last year, we had this influx of new members. So for us, each time we see an increase in number of members or higher payroll, without changing the contribution rates, it means more money comes into the fund. But the opposite would happen if we were to start to lose teachers. Without changing the contributions, we would collect less money. So that's why we keep an eye on that. So if you keep in mind, and of these risks, the two that could really change things drastically in a single year: investment risk and the membership payroll risk. So let's look at what happened last year, because we have positive news for you. Again, our time-weighted return, the one we reported in July, 8.4%. We assume 7%, so positive. What I want to highlight is, since the funding plan was adopted 10 years ago, our average compounded return has been 7.7. So now when I tell you on the next slide we're ahead of schedule, you shouldn't be surprised, because we've earned more than 7 on average. So that's why we keep an eye on this. And the number of active members, payroll risk. So here you see the last 20 years of active members. The red bar to the right is this year. We now have the highest number of active teachers in the defined benefit program, the highest number we've ever seen, just over 467,000 active teachers. Last year we had 458, so we went up by about 9,000. Total payroll went up by 8%. Again, great news. And if you look at that chart, at the low point in the middle, that's when the funding plan was adopted. So again, if you look at what we monitor, number of teachers has gone up by almost 40,000 since the funding plan was adopted. And return-wise, we've earned 7.7 on average. So you should not be surprised to see this chart. So we've shown you this. We update it every year. The red line you see here is when the funding plan was adopted. This was our anticipated path to full funding. The blue line is what we've actually seen. When you look backward, and forward are our current projections. Again, this assumes we keep earning 7%. But now, a year ago, we told you we would reach full funding potentially in 2044. Now it's 2043. So because of this positive experience last year, we've moved up 1 year. So again, as long as we keep earning around 7% and we don't see a huge decline in number of active teachers, we're in a very good place. So what does that mean for next year?
That's all we need to do.
Yeah, so contribution rate-wise, so next May we'll come back to you will be when we present to you the actual valuation results, and you'll be voting on what do we do with the contribution rates. Right now, based on where we are, we don't foresee, there are no need for rate increases in the near future. So in fact, if you look at this, with the current contribution rate for the state, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, the state is quite ahead of schedule. Right now, they're on track to pay off their share in 3 years, 2027. If you think about it, the funding plan was designed for them to pay their share by 2046. That's quite ahead of schedule. The employers, which the share doesn't move too much from year to year, we're still ahead of schedule, mostly because we have more teachers now in the system. So if you think about it, when the funding plan was passed, we now have 40,000 more teachers on which we collect payroll. Just that alone has helped push the employer 3 years ahead of schedule. So again, very positive news when it comes to the funding. Now, what we're monitoring, and we've seen you this chart. We don't have an update, unfortunately. We've reached out to Department of Finance that their new figure is not out yet. But this is what we got last year in October of 23. Department of Finance has been projecting decline in number of K through 12 enrollments. And the reason it's important for us is, again, we don't know what it would do exactly, but one would think if we're going to have less children in California attending public schools, at some point, we may need less teachers. So that's why we're keeping an eye on this. But what we wanted to share with you, if you're wondering why we're seeing this, Department of Finance did issue some new information on their website. It's for the whole world to see. It's interesting. So we just wanted you to be aware of it, especially when you hear stories about K through 12 enrollment declining. Sometimes it's being portrayed as people are leaving California. It's not the real reason. The chart on the left is the reason. This is the fertility rates in California. And I want you to see, if you go back to the early 2000s, fertility rate was about 2.1, 2.2. Which was fairly common across the US. And since then, you can see it's been steadily declining. And this is not something that's unique to California. United States is seeing everywhere in the US, everywhere around the world. If you look in all the developed countries, fertility rates are dropping. There were actually articles in both New York Times and Wall Street Journal last month talking about this. But we are now below 1.5 in California. And Department of Finance expects this number to stay that low in perpetuity. What does that mean? You have less children. Eventually, you have less women of childbearing age. So you can kind of see that on the right. This creates this cycle of less and less children. Now, if you go back to this chart here, we don't have projections going further, but based on these numbers and what we know of demographic patterns, this is something that's going to continue through time. We're going to continue to see declines unless the fertility rates start going up again. I think there is a say out there that if you want to be able to keep your population stable, you need a fertility rate of about 2.1. We're at 1.5. So it's something that, again, it might take 40, 50 years, but just there's a reason why. I just want you to be aware, the main reason why we are seeing a projected decline in number of children in K through 12 is mostly tied to this fertility rate. You can make anecdotal stories of people moving to other states and so forth, but those have minimal impact. This is the main driver here. And again, if you look at the United States as a whole, it's about 1.6 is the fertility rate. So California, we're just below the average for the United States. Again, just something we wanted you to be aware. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is going back to this chart here that we showed you, the fact that the state is going to be paying off their share right now. It's scheduled to happen in 2027. So there is a provision in statute right now that says once it's been determined that the state has paid off their share of the unfunded liability, that their supplemental rate goes to zero immediately. So if you look this year in 24-25, we are, for the defined benefit program only, we are collecting 8.3% from the state. There's a base rate of 2% that's set in statute. Then you have the supplemental rate that you set as a board. So you adopted about 6.3 last May. So that's the 8.3. Right now, we're planning to keep that rate at 8.3 for the next 3 fiscal years. And in 28-29, if in fact the state is done paying their share, that rate is going to go down to 2. Now, the reason it matters is once this happens, it could put us in a more vulnerable position when it comes to reacting to investment performance. And I'll show you what we mean by this. I'll give you 2 little examples. So if you look for the last 24 years, if I were to ask you how many times did we have a negative return? It's happened 5 times. And 4 times it's been around -5 or worse. So as actuaries, as a number of people, Okay, that happens once every 6 years on average, so not an unlikely event. So we decided to look at, okay, what if we were to have a negative 5% return in 25, 26? So before the state rate, the supplemental goes to zero. Immediately, we would need to raise the state rate to 12%. But because of our limits, we can only do it 0.5% at a time. So there's a reason why we have not wanting to reduce the state rate from where it is, because we want to be ready in case we have a year like this. And if this were to occur, we would be able to react in time, increase the state rate, and we would reach full funding, and we would be able to eliminate the state share of the unfunded liability by 2046. But if it were to happen in 27, 28, right after the state is done paying their share, now we start from zero. So if you think about it, right now we're paying, the supplemental rate is 6.3. Once that goes to zero, if all we want to do is go back to where we are today, that's going to take 12 years because it's 0.5% a year. And you can see here, we would increase by 0.5% each year. We would be just above 10% by 2046. If I go back to the previous slide, still below what we really need. And what does that mean? In this case, the state would still have an unfunded liability of $102 billion in 2046. Today, it's $8 billion is their share. So that's why we're keeping an eye on this. And I would say it's a very good thing that the state is ahead of schedule, because that means we're in a very good place, but it does introduce this potential risk the moment that rate goes down to zero. It's going to make it a little bit harder to react to investment performance. Again, we're in a very good place, but just something to be aware that if it does happen, it might be harder to react to if we were to have one of those years. So with this, I just wanted to kind of remind you here, or the sort of I feel like our funding plan, what are we watching on your behalf? You know, Rick mentioned the end date of 2046. This is something that at some point is going to have to be addressed, because if nothing happens, we're going to go back to the pre-funding plan rules. So it's a long way away. It's 22 years. But we are keeping an eye on this. That unallocated, we haven't talked to you much about it. If you remember, when we break down our unfunded liability, there's this little unallocated piece. It's actually been in a surplus position since 2021, when we earned 27%. So again, if it could potentially revert back to be a deficit if you want in the future. So that's why we're keeping an eye on it. But right now, it's not an issue. And then the state is what we just talked about. Especially once that rate drops to zero, the supplemental rate, it might be harder for us to react to changes in the investment market. So with this, and again, keep in mind, we are, like, if you were to ask me, so what's the news this year? We are still in a good place, slightly ahead of schedule than we were last year, which is very good. Full funding right now is expected to occur in 2043. So we are in a very good place.
Thank you.
And I would add that there are other risks to the plans, but they're minor. We do watch those, we keep an eye on those, and we do try to use tools to predict which other risks would become big enough to cause us issues, but they don't. So these are still the major risks. So with that, we're happy to take comments and questions.
Erin, go ahead.
I just had a question, and this might be a question for finance, but when they use the term like fertility rate, like I think of it more as like birth rate.
Yeah, birth rates, correct.
So is that the same?
Correct, yes.
Okay,
So
I just, because it seemed a little. It's a
weird word.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's called fertility rates, but it's just.
But that's the same term.
Yeah, birth
Okay.
rates. So birth rate of 2 means on average, every woman has two children on average, is what it means. So now we're at 1.5, sort of. We're just below 1.5.
I thought that was interesting though, because I think of that in terms of kids in school, but I hadn't thought of like they grow up to be teachers. Yes. So that was interesting to me. I think that, how do you think about that in terms of economics too, in terms of, I mean, I think of my neighbors in Eagle Rock, they don't have kids because they can't afford to, right? So how do we think about that number in terms of things like, I don't know, income inequality, or, you know, that people are having less kids. I guess maybe this is not your question. Maybe that's a question I should ask my friends over a coffee tonight. But it's just, yeah, I find that interesting because I think there's a lot of factors leading to some of those data points. So.
Yeah, I think we look at it all the time and look at the consequence and how it's going to affect the economy and investments. It is interesting. Around the world, we were looking. It's the same things happening in most of the industrial countries, and even some that used to have high birth rates now are declining and
China's
so forth.
one-child policy. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the report. This is always so interesting, and I really appreciate you kind of highlighting for us. I still feel like investment risk, you know, you've highlighted that before as one of our chief risks. So I appreciate you continuing to remind us of what to be aware of. So thank you.
Okay, Harry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very interesting presentation every year. Question around the investment risk being the single greatest risk to the funding plan, underperformance. Do you think about the amount of risk when we look at the asset allocation of the portfolio and the bets we're making inside the portfolio, do you think about the risks that we're taking as an organization relative to the return we're looking to get? And how do you, do you guys look at that?
Yes, we do, and we work closely with the investment team, and everything we've presented to you, that's including the report, all the analysis, the stochastic analysis we did, was all done by receiving input from our investment staff about it's all reflecting how we anticipate our portfolio to behave, and vice versa. When you're having a discussion around the asset allocation, we work closely with investment staff to make sure that you understand the potential impact of your decisions on the funding as well.
Reassuring. I thought that was the answer. It's very good to know that those types of conversations are taking place. And then as it relates to fertility rates, and that has been receiving quite a bit of public attention, not only here, but globally, as you said. I'm not an expert, but I've spoken to some that are. Longer term, that has massive implications to society at large and to us. We may not be around to kind of really fully understand it, but we have a responsibility to the fund longer term. If you were in our shoes, and you were sitting on the dais, what would you be asking yourselves about the potential implications of a fertility rate that's going this way, which means fewer teachers? What questions would you be thinking about longer term to a funding plan, how we think about CalSTRS and the system?
I would ask myself, what products and scientific inventions can we invest in and become part of that would mitigate in a society where there are very few birth rates, there's an older population, the need for technology is going to be a lot greater to assist people as they get older, and as we live a lot longer. So how much longer are we going to live, past, 100? So as we continue to live longer, get older, what products and inventions and scientific, investments can we make to make sure the fund is positioned for that? So that's the way I look at it. So I'd look at biotech and biology to do that.
And just to add a bit, so going back to your question also you mentioned funding plan, for example, and Scott is coming. And also, for me, and Scott can probably add to it as well, when you think about one of the, and we've provided some of the information in the report, one of the biggest implications of this long term will be cash flows. If you look in the report, we have a cash flow projection, and our cash flows, as you know, are negative today. They're only going to get, as the population age and we potentially have less teachers, we're going to see a larger negative cash flows, which will need to be taken into account in the asset allocation process. And we do take that into account, and Scott can add to it, but during the asset allocation process, that is one of the input of it, the fact that we have negative cash flows. From a funding perspective, if you think about the authority you have today to adjust contribution rates, there's a reason why we look at payroll risk as one of the risks. It could become more challenging in the future if we do in fact start to see further decline in number of active teachers, because we do collect contributions as a percentage of payroll. I've seen other retirement systems out there try to eliminate this risk by collecting contribution as a dollar amount, a fixed dollar amount each year, instead of doing it as a percentage of payroll. So it's certainly something that we could look at in the future. There are ways to think about it, but we're here for you to monitor these risks. And if we see, as you know, if we see things that we don't like with the funding plan, we'll be the first one to stand here and tell you we need to worry about this. But we are trying to think about all these things. Scott?
Yeah, so I think we started to get into investments, so I jumped up here. But I think, and without doing
That's reassuring too.
Without doing a model or getting really specific into this issue, I think what we're seeing is a gradual decline in the fertility or birth rate, right? And so this is likely to affect us over time, right? So we can develop a plan. If it were to be a huge shock, then I think that would be, but I don't think it's going to fall off a cliff all of a sudden. So first and foremost, we're geared towards reaching full funding. And I think as we reach that pathway and we think about the future changes, this is going to become a bigger question as we sort of march towards that full funding. Right, so you're seeing the trends now, but it's a bit, it's still slow moving. On the investment side, I'll offer some thoughts, because if you just think about the basic economies of countries, right, it's how much machinery or CapEx, how much is your human capital, the demographics, in other words, how much productivity do you get? A lot of that's, technology driven these days. And so that dynamic has generally favored increasing demographics means greater productivity for nations, right? But as we enter more and more of a technology age, that the productivity might more and more be coming from technology and growing the income of nations. So, we've talked a lot about technology, innovation, and AI, and that does have the potential to start to change the dynamic of demographics being one of the leading indicators of demographic growth, in other words, being one of the leading indicators of economic and income prosperity in a nation. Because if we become so much more productive, and there's more evidence for the United States, as an example, that we're becoming more and more efficient and effective through technology. So I'm not saying that, hey, it's changed on a dime already, but I think to Rick's point, as we think about investing in the future, we really have to think about how that future is going to be shaped with technology as well, and how demographics might shift. Again, I'm not saying this, but one day it could be an advantage to have less demographics in the sense that if technology has made countries more and more efficient, because there's going to be likely some transition of workers as well through technology innovation.
One last question, Madam Chair. So to that point, if we use the percentage of payroll as one of the inputs, and we've seen a decline in the number of students, which may result in fewer members. Hypothetically, if there are fewer members because of fewer students and/or because of technological advancements, could the offset in percentage of payroll be offset by a material increase in compensation for the members, the teachers of the future?
Yes.
Okay. But it would have to be a material increase in terms of how
That was great.
educators are compensated.
Correct.
Okay.
And you remember in the 90s when something like that started to occur, the state of California did class size reduction. And so there was a whole program to improve the education of students by having, smaller class sizes. So you could see something like that occurring also.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Michelle.
Well, actually, Scott, I appreciate you wandering up because you actually sort of commented on what I was going to say. So either you're reading my mind or we just made a really good choice in making sure we put you in this position. No, I just wanted to speak. I hear some of my fellow board members as it relates to sort of these projections. And I'll tell you at Finance, this chart is just from this last month, as you can see. And it was something actually internally we also struggled with in some ways because kind of to your point, Scott, it's one factor. I agree fertility is maybe a weird weird way to display it rather than birth rates, but one of the things I think we struggled with on a broader scale when we look at, and to your question about broader economic impact as we look at these trends, is that one, this chart goes out to 2050, and I think there's some thinking around just the longevity of what we're trying to project out, right? I mean, it's so far into the future, so to try to be responsive in the immediacy based on this is, I think, premature, kind of to your point, Scott. But I think one of the other pieces that, and I just want to underscore this because I do think it's important, and it does speak to the second point you brought up around AI and technology, and what does that overlay as far as economics with a smaller demographic potentially. I think one of the things that we were really interested in looking at is, and I think we've heard a lot of narrative out in the public space around this exodus out of California, and therefore that was why we're starting to see these trends. And I think part of, and the piece that you don't see with these charts is that secondary element, which I know you spoke to briefly, is that we're not seeing that. We are just seeing a change in family structure, which could be one of the reasons, but not all of the reasons. So I just say this to provide a little bit of caution. I'll be really honest. I think even internally, we were like, how do we present this chart so that it doesn't create a sense of concern that's unnecessary in some ways, right? Because one, it does project out quite far, and it does not take into factor some of the other pieces that have already been discussed around efficiencies and really total impact on economy. So that, and my only other point is, I think the chart prior to around K-12 enrollment, I appreciate that you all wait for finance to give you that number, but I might just give you a heads up that if you go across the way to my friend at CDE, they might actually have those numbers faster.
Just to add, we are in constant communication with the staff at Finance, and we were informed of newer numbers where we're asked, since they were still being reviewed internally, to not share them. So we were responsive.
Okay, Mr. Ruffino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question with respect to the contribution rate stability. You mentioned that the state as well as the employer contribution rates are expected to remain stable, obviously for the 25-26 fiscal year. What are the primary indicators that could lead to changes in these rates in the future? And B, how prepared, I think we are, but maybe you can comment, how prepared is CalSTRS to handle volatility in contribution rates if a significant economic downturn were to occur?
So I think you've answered your first question by an economic downturn is what could really impact those contribution rates, especially the state. Now, the one advantage of our funding plan, the way it was structured, the employer contribution rate is almost immune to investment performance. It's really, all of this falls on the state. The employer is more at risk if we start to see a large decline in the number of teachers. So that could, again, not to collect more dollars, but just to pay down the debt that's already there, we might need to raise the rate. So it's really just, it's the state contribution rate that's more at risk of having to increase. And it's really tied to to our investment return. And again, as right now, we are in a very good place to be able to react to even a severe recession, as long as it occurs, as we showed you on that chart, as long as it occurs before that state supplemental rate goes to zero. Because it's going to be very hard to react to such event after that point in time. So that's why we're monitoring it. But if something happens in the next 3 years, hopefully not, before that rate goes to zero, we are in a very good place to react. And the funding plan has been designed to help us react to recession. Again, if it's a recession like we saw around 2000, we are prepared. If it's another financial crisis, we have an example in the report, it's going to be hard to recover from this. But I think we've made substantial changes to our portfolio since we've got the risk mitigation strategy. So I think, I know Scott left us, but I believe he would say we're in a better place today to handle those than we were back in 08, 09.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of course. Oh, change mine? Okay.
Yeah, I changed my mind because Frank's question was the one that I was looking for. Thank you.
Perfect. I see no further questions here. Are there any public comments?
We do have one public comment.
Okay.
If we could get a 3-minute timer, please. And our comment is from Dawn.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Several of the board members have been addressing the fertility rate. And I think we all realize that that's going to be an important indicator of where we are as a pension system down the road. I wanted to comment on the Department of Finance assumption that the fertility rate levels off around 1.5. If we look at other advanced economies, I could use Japan, Italy, South Korea, there's nothing to stop that fertility rate from leveling off. And in fact, it continues to decrease. And it seems that there's no lower limit of where it goes. And several economies are now below 1. And so that may have some serious repercussions down the road. And I thank you for thinking about that very seriously in your considerations on our plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Thank you.
Wow.
That's a lot.
I'm not really doom and gloom, but.
No. Okay, item number 7, innovation update. Welcome. Yes. Could we do it after this? Are you good?
You're supposed to do a break now?
I know. After this, we'll take a break. Good morning.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Vaishali Dwarka.
Can you move it closer? Maybe.
Vaishali Dwarka, Head of Enterprise Strategy. With me, I have Jennifer Hall, and she is a Managing Director with Accenture and our Principal Innovation Consultant. Today, I'll provide you an update on our progress on implementing the innovation program here at CalSTRS. I'll share the results of our first innovation sprint, which we intentionally explored ideas to improve customer experience. I'll also share, this sprint helped us test our new innovation playbook, and we'll look ahead at what's up next for innovation as well. So, innovation is a board priority under Goal 2 of the strategic plan, leading innovation and managing change. As part of this priority, we embarked on a journey to build our innovation capabilities. We started by bringing on an expert in the innovation space to assess our current state, innovation readiness, and culture. We began this engagement with Accenture in March of 2023. Since then, we've completed the assessment and the design phase, and we are currently in the implementation phase. This phase consists of evaluating ideas, developing proofs of concepts, and testing our innovation playbook. At CalSTRS, we define innovation as a new way of doing things to evolve the experiences of our members and our people. During the assessment phase of the program, we conducted a variety of activities such as focus groups, surveys, and held discussions with leaders. This is where we identified these 7 focus areas for innovation. What this means is we will see the most value and return on investment in addressing challenges and opportunities in these 7 focus areas. So the innovation function addresses opportunities through sprints. So as ideas come through the pipeline, they are evaluated and experimented on using a sprint. So in simple terms, a sprint is just a structured approach or a phased approach to experiment with new ideas. For our first sprint, as I mentioned, we chose to explore a concept that impacts customer experience. When we started this sprint, our primary goal was to experiment with ideas that would customize or streamline member processes and would allow better experiences for our members. Our secondary goal was to make sure that we pressure tested the innovation process that we've established and the sprint approach and know whether it's the right approach for us. This is important because as we move an idea through a pilot all the way through scaling, we want to make sure that those ideas, not only can we pilot them fast, quicker, but also be able to scale that solution idea if we got to scaling. We also wanted to make sure that the learnings that we had from the sprint would inform us in our innovation playbook, and we can refine our innovation playbook. So we started working with a small team of leaders, innovation staff, and partners in retirement readiness to conduct surveys, interviewed leaders, subject matter experts to identify a challenge and ways to solve it. Then the team went and researched and refined those ideas. Through this process of identifying and validating, we learned that MSC staff have challenges resolving complex survivor benefit inquiries. This is how our innovation challenge came about. So as you see it on the screen, the key question was, how might we better equip MSC staff to answer survivor benefit questions? We know that this subject is complex. It requires special expertise, lots of information and resources, and can be difficult for staff to sort through this information quickly and respond to a member who is waiting. So the team then began to explore ways to solve for this challenge. After conducting their research, the team was able to narrow down a concept for a Gen AI chatbot that would help MSC staff quickly answer survivor benefit questions. The bot pulled data from an existing knowledge management base, which staff currently use, which is also known as the Member Assistant Guide. In compliance with our Gen AI policy that we've just released recently, no PII was involved in the testing of this bot. We then partnered with technology services and 2 external vendors to develop, test, and compare 2 chatbot prototypes using 2 different technologies. The 2 prototypes were presented to a steering committee and who approved to move forward with a pilot with one of the 2 chatbots that showed the most promising results. We then took that bot and piloted it with 42 staff in a test environment using customer scenarios that they may encounter in their day-to-day work. We achieved very good promising results of accuracy from this bot, and most users reported that they thought it would be useful for resolving customer inquiries. So now to the outcomes of that sprint. After the success of the first pilot, discussions were held with leaders to expand the pilot. However, after reviewing the options for the second and expanded pilot, the steering committee decided that we were not going to pursue the bot further. Even though there were positive pilot results, we acknowledged that the sample size was small, and we also acknowledged that the time, effort, and cost that it would take to go for an expanded pilot outweighed the benefits that we would have gained if we went with the bot. It also didn't fully resolve the issues that the MSC staff had in answering their survivor benefit questions. However, during our research, we identified a different solution that would work better, which was an existing support line for use for the MSC staff. If you take away anything from this presentation, what I say next would be really important. So sunsetting a concept is an essential part of the innovation process. So this is where the value of innovation comes into play, because it lets us quickly understand whether a solution was a great fit before we invested a lot of time and effort into it. Experimentation is part of innovation, and being able to quickly decommission or sunset or backlog a solution or an idea is part of innovation. So I know in our day-to-day life, sometimes we hear the phrase, fail fast, fail often. What does that mean? This is what it means. The intent of innovation is to make decisions faster, consider critical decision-making points, minimize those that are not necessary, and being able to quickly bounce back and go back to the drawing board with more idea exploration quickly. So even though the chatbot, we have not moved forward with the concept, this is going back to our library of ideas and may be used in future sprints for a different challenge. One thing I want to stress is that even though the bot is being put to the back burner, we had a lot of important learnings through this process. We now have an escalation line for the MSC staff that will help them, will support them in the survivor when they have complex survivor benefit questions. We had a lot of lessons learned, and we'll use these lessons learned to refine our playbook, which will help us improve our future sprints as well. We validated that the innovation process that we've established now works. We were successfully able to use a small team, a small sprint team, to explore ideas without huge investments of time and resources. We used these learnings to also make an informed decision about a new tool without investing in going into full implementation. We also identified a need to create a streamlined governance and approval process. We built internal relationships to know how we can work better with them in future sprints, and also identified new partnerships that we would want to have if we went through this. This is innovation. Collecting ideas, exploration, experimentation, sunsetting, backlogging ideas, bouncing back, and applying learning. So this is what innovation is. I think I went ahead with the slide, so we're here. Okay, this is what's up for, what to look forward to in innovation next. 4 things. We'll be working with the technology and governance partners to support an approval pathway to allow for rapid experimentation through a governance and approval sprint. The goal here would be to ensure that we're making this process of testing, experimentation faster in a safe and agile ways. We also plan to conduct an org-wide effort to unlock a strong innovation culture. So as part of the assessment phase, we looked at our innovation readiness and innovation culture, and we identified opportunities in some areas such as prioritization, reaching collective agreement, and nimble decision-making. So to test this understanding further in our readiness and culture, we conducted a culture pilot where 18 benefits and services leaders ran behavioral experiments in their day-to-day work to address their innovation challenges. The pilot was successful, showed very promising results, and we thought that it would be good to roll this out to the whole enterprise. So you've heard a little bit about technology, you're hearing a little about culture. This is where both technology and culture play a critical role in innovation, and they are enablers of innovation. So they can work well together to unlock innovation capabilities. Next, we are planning to roll out an idea portal that will enable anyone in their organization to be able to submit ideas.
That's great.
What is important about this is that this levels the playing field for everybody in the organization. Anybody can submit a creative idea and somebody will evaluate it. Currently, this portal is in development with our technology partners. And before we launch the portal, we're hoping to launch an org-wide communications plan to staff so that they can understand the value of innovation and how they can contribute to ideas. We currently have about 25 ideas, and these ideas are tech-related and some are non-tech-related. So when you think about innovation, keep your mind open and not just focus on technology. To help us vet these ideas, we are adding some team members. Their roles would be to vet, research, and validate these ideas that would come through the portal. And then this staff will also be able to support the innovation sprints, like the example I just showed of what we did, and conduct culture development activities. Lastly, we are also working to shape our Gen AI strategy. And we are partnering with the Gen AI team to apply this innovation approach to evaluate and test use cases. Okay. So in conclusion, I've gone over what our innovation program timeline looks like. I've walked you through how we approach innovation here at CalSTRS, what a sprint would look like, and what to look forward to in future updates. So there's a lot of hard work that's gone into this, and I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge a couple of staff members that helped make us this much progress. So Lisa Williams, she is the innovation manager and instrumental for making this happen and running a sprint. All the retirement readiness staff that contributed to the ideas and solution testing when we ran our first sprint, because you can have an innovation program, but if you don't have great ideas and willing people that are willing to contribute and test things out, there's nothing you can do about that. And then we had a willing partner, a willing leader who was willing to take a chance on the program, Kate LeBlanc and Lan Lee, who helped spearhead the sprint. So thank you so much. And then we all know that innovation is a priority for the board. So we did get unwavering support from the executive staff and their commitment to innovation. So that is important to acknowledge as well. And with that, those were my prepared remarks. So I'm here to answer any questions either you have of me or my partner here, Jennifer Hall.
Thank you. We do have a question.
Sure.
Mr. Gunning.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to share how pleased I am with this report. I think, working in state government, you see how government gets locked into processes and outcomes, right? And so I just truly appreciate your openness to this, the innovative way you're going about this, even to sunset ideas and look for new ideas, because sometimes you go down rabbit holes. And so I just wanted to share, Madam Chair, how pleased I am with this process and really excited about your abilities, what you'll discover, and how you're going about discovering it. So just kudos to the team.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, here we go. Michelle.
Yeah, I want to echo what Mr. Gunning just indicated. I know that this current example you gave obviously was around the MSC team, and I want to take the opportunity to echo that I'm glad that we're using a process that allows some out-of-the-box thinking, but as you mentioned, also has a end date for that if it doesn't work, right? So that you're not either one, spending resources going down a path that maybe you now have staff having to be trained on something, and then it ends up being more cumbersome than it began. And the example you gave today, I really appreciate. I will just say, and this is probably not the right spot to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. I was gracious to the staff to give me the opportunity to go shadow the customer service team for an hour. And I'd suggest I'd probably, most of you have done it, and I'm new to the board, and so I really appreciate the opportunity. But it was such an amazing insight to how much our team members know. I mean, I was amazed within that hour how much they had to, recall. And the gentleman I was shadowing, I think, brilliant in his own right, like just knew things off the top of his head. So, one of the conversations I had during that time frame was exactly this: is there ways that we can be helpful to support our team around some of these? They get any question from anybody that they just have to sort of know. So, again, I know it's not specific. I know the innovation is a much broader approach, and I love that you are all doing that. But I think it's wonderful that specifically the example you gave today is to support that team in doing their work more efficiently, because my sense when I walked away was that one of the things that we pride ourselves on is that when people call, they're not on hold for 50 minutes waiting for somebody who's live, and they get somebody who's not only thoughtful, they're knowledgeable, and they're kind. And so any way we can help support that team and not train them maybe on something that, like he said, that you looked at this and it's not going to work, so we move on, I appreciate. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I echo Mr. Gunning's comments, and I would just put an exclamation point on the creating a portal for innovative ideas, and that great ideas can come from anyone, not specifically a title.
Absolutely.
And that there's a space for ideas to go. And I loved your comment that what is needed is great ideas and willing people. Those are soft skills, but I think are invaluable. Curious mind in this day and age is very powerful. And I would encourage all of us on the board to be curious about how we can do our work better. And it goes to our CIO's comment yesterday: who do we want to be? Doesn't just mean who do we want to be in terms of how are we allocating $350 billion in assets and who our partners will be. For me, and I think for all of us, it's who do we want to be in terms of innovation, technology, servicing our members. As Michelle just said, in terms of how our members are contacting and interacting. So I'm excited, and I love the sunsetting of ideas too. Fail often and fail free. What is that? I like that.
Fail fast, fail often.
I've surely done that. I'm looking for some wins. But thank you. It was a really exciting report. And look forward to the continued update, and applaud Cassandra, our CEO, and our executive team for having innovation at the, on our strategic plan, on our governance consulting, helping us. So, well done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that concludes the board's questions. Are there any public comments?
There are no members of the public in queue for this item.
Okay, thank you both very much for the presentation. We are going to take a quick break until 11. We actually have an online presentation, so if we could try and be back at 11, that would be awesome. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I know 10 minutes flies by, sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
We are on item number 8, diversity, equity, and inclusion assessment. And Crystal, I believe you're going to kick this off.
I am. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the board. Crystal Turco, CalSTRS staff. The purpose of this information item is to provide the board an update regarding the diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic priority. This update will focus on our progress to date, recommendations for next steps, and our plan moving forward. I am joined today by TJ Kochar, CalSTRS DE&I specialist, as well as our partners from Guidehouse, Aaron Brink-Johnson, and Dr. Kim Turner. Also joining us virtually is Davida Vance-Cooks. Davida isn't going to do any part of the presentation, but she's available to answer questions at the end, as we all are as well. So with that, I will turn this over to Dr. Turner.
Thank you, Crystal. Again, Dr. Kim Turner. I'm managing consultant for Guidehouse and project manager for CalSTRS DEI consulting project. And I'm here presenting with my colleague, Aaron Brink-Johnson. I'll have you introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Aaron Brink-Johnson. I've been the senior consultant on this project. Thank you.
And again, we have Davida Vance-Cooks joining us virtually. She is a director at Guidehouse and project director for this DEI consulting project. So we just really want to thank you for the opportunity to come back to CalSTRS and report on phase 2 and phase 3 of the project. Over the past 11 months since we've been here, we have collaborated with project sponsors, points of contact, executive sponsors on really delivering design and implementation. And so it's really been a pleasure serving you all over the past year and a half. So for this board meeting, we will focus on CalSTRS DEI progress to date, knowledge management, recommendations for next steps, and a plan going forward. So this presentation will be a collaboration of both Guidehouse and CalSTRS presenters. So Guidehouse will identify the results of phases 1 through 3, share ways that Guidehouse has supported CalSTRS in implementation, review the 5 inclusive culture recommendations confirmed at the end of phase 1. They've really been a guide to creating our action plans in phase 2, the deliverables in phase 3, and then the plan moving forward. We will also share quick wins or accomplishments and a knowledge management proposal. We will then pass it to CalSTRS project sponsor team, who will discuss next steps and the future of DEI at CalSTRS. So beginning with phase 1, it was completed in September of 2023, and we provided an overview to the board in January of 24. Phase 1 results determined that CalSTRS was a proactive DEI organization, and from that assessment, Guidehouse developed 5 inclusive culture recommendations that we'll talk about in a moment. Phase 2, Design and Evolve, took place from October 23 to April 24. It resulted in collaborating with CalSTRS to create and deliver a change management plan with steps for change readiness, as well as action plans for all 5 recommendations. The action plan outlined the business case and identified key initiatives, inputs, outputs, tasks, DEI metrics, and a data and evaluation plan. Guidehouse also worked with CalSTRS to create a definition for equity. We are currently in the process of completing phase 3 and have delivered 11 quick wins. And the next slide will provide a little bit more insight into what a quick win is. So what is a quick win? Quick wins are really a typical change management tool to build momentum. So they are small-scale, achievable milestones that could be accomplished quickly and offer immediate benefits to the project. So Guidehouse and CalSTRS work together to review the action plans and identify quick wins. We applied inclusive culture impact and level of effort criteria to the tasks and identified 46 data points, separated between quick wins, long-term, and short-term tasks. The 11 quick wins that we identified really provides CalSTRS with a baseline of DEI strategy documents. And again, 100% of those quick win documents were submitted for review. So quick wins really aligned with the inclusive culture recommendations. As a reminder, our definition of inclusive culture is the creation of positive work environment that supports, values, respects employees from all backgrounds, and provides employees with an equitable opportunity to contribute and influence the well-being of an organization. We identified 2 types of inclusive culture. The first was structural, which really focused on building a strong DEI foundation and organization-wide DEI, and behavioral, which focused on understanding how DEI can be incorporated in actions, attitudes, and habits. So again, the 5 recommendations were: establish a strategy, to create a roadmap aligned with CalSTRS' mission, vision, and values. Govern the strategy, to establish a DEI governance to achieve the strategy. Create a learning environment that educates and impacts behavior, holding all accountable for changing the behavior, and developing a DEI narrative to communicate CalSTRS' DEI intent. So now I will pass it to Erin to provide an overview of CalSTRS' DEI progress to date through quick wins and recommendations for next steps.
So you can see the full list of quick wins and accomplishments for structural inclusion on the slide, but there are a few that we would like to highlight, which are the DEI metrics, the guiding coalition charter, and the proposed governance structure. We've chose to highlight these 3 quick wins as they show the importance of measuring the governance structure, as well as how to move forward. For the DEI metrics, Guidehouse developed a process where CalSTRS points of contacts selected 4 metrics for each of the inclusive culture recommendations. For example, employee turnover rate was selected for the establish the DEI strategy recommendation. And this is a quantitative metric that tracks the percentage of employees by race and ethnicity, gender identity, and generation and age that are leaving CalSTRS, impacting productivity and continuity. Another example is perception survey results, and that was selected for the govern the strategy recommendation. This is a qualitative metric that collects feedback from employees on their perceptions of CalSTRS' DEI efforts and structure. The presentation will go into a little bit more detail about the DEI governance structure and guiding coalition later. But for the DEI guiding coalition, the guiding coalition charter was established to outline guiding coalition members' roles, responsibilities, and authorities. The charter also sets meeting cadence and provides meeting agendas for all meetings through December 2024. The proposed governance structure proposes a DEI organizational chart based upon peer review research. The plan moving forward for structural recommendations includes embedding DEI recommendations into the strategic plan and implementing DEI governance structure.
Jonathan, I think we're having some trouble with the PowerPoint. Thank you.
Thank you. Similarly, for the behavioral recommendations, you'll see the full list of quick wins on the slide. But the one that we would like to highlight here is the internal DEI communication plan and toolkit. We've chosen to highlight this one because communication really sets the narrative and the value that it brings. For the internal DEI communications and toolkit, this was developed as an in-depth and comprehensive communications resource. It includes DEI communication vehicles, frequency, and success measures for communication. It also includes 9 different communication tools, including a DEI dashboard, guiding coalition guide, and a DEI feedback loop. The plan moving forward for the behavioral recommendations includes developing a DEI training plan, assessing metrics and determining an evaluation plan, and aligning DEI communications with existing initiatives. Guidehouse will also create a comprehensive and seamless transfer of knowledge. Guidehouse will facilitate this transfer through 4 key steps, which are creation of deliverable documents. Guidehouse has delivered 11 quick win documents, which can serve as live documents for CalSTRS to edit and revise as necessary. A document checklist, which will highlight how to use each of the 11 deliverable documents. A data repository, and Guidehouse will work with CalSTRS to create this data repository, which will hold all deliverables that Guidehouse has provided and serve as a place for collaboration for CalSTRS on DEI moving forward. And finally, a training session. Guidehouse will facilitate a training session on December the 11th to assist CalSTRS on how to use each of the documents. I will now pass it to TJ, who will discuss the plan moving forward.
Thank you, Guidehouse team. As you've heard, Guidehouse has been a great partner in helping us to assess, design, and evolve our DEI efforts. There is a lot of work before us that we are eager to get to, and we are dedicated to ensuring DEI remains a key area of focus here at CalSTRS. A best practice of the DEI industry is that if you want your DEI efforts to succeed, they need to be of strategic importance to the organization. So our first priority is to take the recommendations from Guidehouse and work with CalSTRS business partners to align the action steps to the next strategic plan. Elevating these recommendations to the strategic plan and taking a more measured approach will allow the organization to fully understand the intricacies of Guidehouse's recommendations and then plan accordingly. Next, if we're going to make sure our plans are sustainable and make cultural change in the organization, adequate resourcing is going to be crucial. This includes both financial resources and staffing needs, and also business partnerships. We've begun the process of identifying these needs to support the DEI initiatives with the goal to ensure that DEI efforts have the backing needed to be effective, scalable, and impactful across all levels of the organization. We also recognize the unique interest and commitment that CalSTRS executives, leaders, and board members have to the success of these efforts. So finally, we plan to develop annual DEI reporting. This includes identifying the data and metrics needed, as well as methods for collecting the information. The goal here will be to help us track our progress and hold us accountable, as well as signal the ongoing importance of DEI to both our internal and external stakeholders. In summary, there is a lot of work to do, and with Guidehouse's guidance, I think we have a solid plan. By ensuring that we work together with our business partners, securing the right resources, and focusing on transparent reporting, we will position ourselves for sustained success in DEI. Now, let me turn it over to Crystal, who will go over the details of the DEI strategy as well as our proposed DEI governance structure.
Thanks. Oh, you're gonna make, can you do that for me?
Yes.
Thank you. I can't talk and flip slides. As TJ said, as we were working through this process, especially working with our partner points of contact, communications, and enterprise strategy management, we realized very quickly the value in aligning the prioritized recommendations with the strategic plan rather than creating a separate plan for implementation. Additionally, as TJ mentioned, because there is a lot of work associated with this effort, by timing the recommendations out over the life of the strategic plan, it will allow us to resource adequately to make sure that the work is being focused and gets done. So for each of the 5 recommendations, and I know I don't have my glasses on, but I can barely see the wording up there. I promise you the next slide, it's going to blow it up in a little more detail. But for each of the 5 recommendations, they're proposed individual initiatives for the upcoming strategic plan. For each recommendation, generally, year 1 focuses on exploring what's needed to succeed for implementing the recommendation. Year 2 is geared toward implementing and piloting action steps. And then year 3 continues and assesses or adds assessments and evaluation steps to determine how well the recommendation is being adopted by the organization. So if you can click to the next slide for me, thank you. Just to highlight here the structural recommendation of establishing the DE&I strategy as an initiative. Our first effort is aligning the DE&I evolution with the organizational strategic plan and seek opportunities to further integrate DE&I into our mission, vision, and core values. These are planned for the first 2 fiscal years while exploring, refining, and reporting metrics and DE&I success will span the full 3 years of the plan. For the board's awareness, the first read of the goals and objectives of the new strategic plan will be presented by Vaishali and her team in January. And then once finalized, the initiatives included for diversity, equity, and inclusion will be outlined in the business plan, which the board receives in July each year. And then moving on to the plan moving forward, the proposed DE&I governance structure. It was very difficult to capture in one slide all parts of this organization that have some sort of role in supporting and moving forward DE&I for our organization. I wanted to say I captured many of the executive functions that are actively involved in DE&I. However, I would be remiss to not say that the entire executive team is a sponsor of DE&I and understands the importance within the organization. This slide is outlining, again, portions of the organization that have a role supporting diversity, but also outlines recommended new responsibilities. And I wanted to talk a little bit further about those new responsibilities. So my priority would be establishing and filling the diversity, equity, and inclusion leader, which you see highlighted in maroon. The DE&I leader is really going to play the most pivotal role as we move forward in advancing our mission to create a workplace that reflects the diversity of our membership. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. As we work to continue to implement this strategy, the DE&I leader is really going to focus on the framework and the strategy, as well as the cadence for reporting out success. 2 additional positions that are going to be established to support DE&I is the DE&I business analyst and the DE&I training analyst. The role of the business analyst is really going to focus on the metrics. So I think one of the early aha moments that I had as we worked through DE&I was we measure a lot at CalSTRS. We measure turnover, we measure position movement, but there's a missing piece to our metric, and that is providing an overlay of the workforce, be it like a demographic overlay, generations, ethnicity, gender, so we can further understand how our programs and our processes are supporting our workforce. So that is going to be main focus of the business analyst position. DE&I training analyst is also going to be a very important role. We do offer training focused on DE&I. In fact, it's one of the core courses for our onboarding for our new employees, but we know we want to do more. And so the the DE&I training analyst, their main responsibilities will be to come in and really take a look at the training that we already offer, as well as develop additional learnings for staff to further enhance DE&I learning at CalSTRS. TJ's role is going to continue to grow as the DE&I coordinator at CalSTRS, although it's not highlighted as a new role. Some of those enhancements will be to grow employee resource groups for the organization, as well as build out that guiding coalition. In case you're wondering what the guiding coalition is, it's really bringing together the executives, the core DE&I working team, as well as the Inclusion Council to really kind of steer the ship in the right direction on DE&I priorities for the organization. So that is our update. And with that, we are happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Gunning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple questions. Is there a current breakdown of the ethnicity of the staff? Could we get that?
Yes.
And then will there be a link between the investment diversity officer and the DEI leader? And how do you propose that works?
So yes, Lachey is actually part of the DE&I core team. We meet, how often do we meet? Monthly?
Monthly.
And Lachey is part of all of those meetings. TJ in his role already is an active member of the DE&I team with investments. And so we just see that relationship continuing to grow as we add the DE&I leader to the organization. So they're already the functions already work together, and they will continue to do so, yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question may be a little premature, maybe, maybe not, but I wanted to reflect and ask about the impact, or maybe not so much of an impact, of this week's election. Specifically, how might the results of this election impact CalSTRS DEI strategic initiative and the implementation, actually, of the phase 3, where are we at? And B, what steps, if any, are being taken or to anticipate or to adapt to changes in a national policy that could influence the DEI practices, whether it's at CalSTRS or elsewhere? I wonder your thoughts, both staff and.
That's a really poignant question. One of the things I want to let you know, all of you know, that we were actually anticipating some of this because we've already been experiencing some of this retrenchment and backlash against DE&I across the country. The thesis for DE&I has not changed. It is clearly shown that there's a return on investment, that it results in the bottom line, increasing the bottom line. It's good for corporations. It's good for organizations. It recruitment and retention are all positively affected, and those facts won't change. So it's grounded in your fiduciary, in all of our fiduciary roles to pay attention to this, that it's a risk if we don't. We know there's a positive return if we do, and that legal analysis hasn't changed. And I'll just let you know that before the election, we put in the can another video for you as fiduciaries, and that's the very question that we addressed, was how is a board and a fiduciary supposed to react to these political changes that really affect or could affect the principles that you're acting under. And I tell you, it doesn't affect it at all because your premise is based upon risk and value to the organization, and that will not change. That's the legal standpoint. I'm sure that there's probably other people who may want to weigh in, but I think that's the touchstone for us. It's fiduciary duty.
If it's all right, I would like to also. I know, Mr. Ruffino, you're wondering who's talking. My name is, I don't know if you can see me, but my name is Davida Vance Cooks. I'm the project director at Guidehouse, and you have been listening to my colleagues, Dr. Turner and Aaron Brink Johnson, working on this project. And I was fortunate to be at the board meeting earlier this year, but I could not attend this year. I would like to answer your question, if I may, by simply admitting and simply stating that DEI will always and should always remain as a strategic asset for CalSTRS. There is a significant amount of research that indicates the value of it, that organizations that do invest in that strategic asset tend to be very, very good in terms of innovation, which you just heard about in your previous presentation. They tend to be more adaptable and they tend to be resilient. Resilience is the key here. And what I'd like to do is to invite CalSTRS to lean into that commitment of not only the fiduciary responsibility, but also recognizing the commitment of having DEI as a strategic asset for a long-term value. This is a long-term initiative. It is a long-term perspective. And when you make decisions for your organization long-term, you cannot forget the fact that you must have diversity and everyone must be at the table. There's nothing wrong with inclusivity. It shows up in different ways, but it is your responsibility. I hope that helps that answer to your question. Can you see me? Okay.
We see you, we hear you.
Thank you.
And two excellent answers, both from legal and ours. So I thank you for those answers and thank you for the presentation, by the way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Sharon?
Yeah, thanks. And I think that, yeah, that's a deep question on many issues, including DE&I. So look forward to brother solving those problems with you. Dr. Turner, you talked about earlier, you referenced like creating a learning environment. And I think obviously we're, some of us are educators, we have educators in the audience. And I just wonder, this is a big project. Obviously it's going to be longer than 3 years, but I appreciate outlining the next 3 years. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about, as you come in as, consultants to staff who already, I think, embody some of these values, but how do you go about creating an environment where you have the best chance of all the staff, whatever level or whatever role people play at CalSTRS, to kind of create the optimal learning environment? Because I've experienced this in the community college environment, conversations, people can be guarded, people can have lots of feelings and reactions, and I think politics certainly adds to that. So can you maybe just give us a sense of how you think about creating a learning environment in CalSTRS as you come in and partner with us? I'd love to hear more about that, because I'm always curious about how to be most effective in driving these initiatives.
Absolutely. I will echo what Davida shared earlier. It's got to be ongoing, right? It can't be, this just one training that folks go to. It has to be embedded, I think, into every part of the organization from the top down. So leaders really being able to understand what the expectations are from CalSTRS as a whole, and also having the leadership and the managerial skills to be able to manage behavior, to be able to create that psychological safety, for individuals and know how to do that. I think it then goes again to the managers who are directly interacting with employees, right? And really being able to hear them, being able to listen to them in order to, teaching them to also how to be transparent as well. And again, creating that psychological safety. And then I think also for individuals as well, I'll go back to really understanding what the expectations are of CalSTRS. I mean, you have right in your core values about trust and respect and accountability, and really having individuals understanding that takes everyone to be accountable for their behaviors and behavioral changes. And also, what does accountability mean? I think really also focusing on that as well. So yeah, I'll go back to just saying creating a comprehensive, ongoing training program that really starts from the top down.
Great, thanks. Look forward to it.
Okay, seeing no further questions, are there any public comments?
There are no members of the public in the queue.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wow.
The headliner, item number 9, Pension Solution Project.
Okay. Embrace it, Ashish. Receive it. Manifest it, man.
Yeah. All good. Deep breath. Good morning. My name is Ashish Jain, Chief Technology Officer, executive sponsor of this project. Since we met last time, our team moved into a very exciting phase of the project, UAT. And Anthony and Chris will go over the progress we made so far. Anthony?
Thanks, Ashish. Good morning, Chair Bradford, members of the board. Anthony Sweeney, Pension Solution Project Director. Since we last met in September, not a whole lot of additional updates or progress to share. So we'll keep it more brief than last time. But I do want to provide a few updates. I want to cover an overall project schedule status, update on our testing efforts, especially user acceptance testing, as Ashish mentioned, and a little more detail with some timelines for our transformation readiness activities, and then cover the latest budget information. So our latest overall project schedule metric, this identifies our 5 key work streams. Again, mostly green. Last time we met, user acceptance testing was green. Prior to that, it was yellow, but it can change periodically. We're yellow right now because our preparation of the test scripts for UAT is slightly behind. We have over 300 UAT test scripts that have already been finalized and are ready for execution out of approximately 440 total. We're about 15% behind of where we plan to be on that preparation, but we do have, the key here is we have enough inventory in our UAT cases, over 300, that will carry us through 2+ months of testing, and we're confident that we'll be able to prepare the remainder for when we test post-January is when those other 100 need to be ready. So we have plenty of time to catch up on that. The next slides cover our project metrics that I share with you ongoing. Our progress on system integration test is just slightly below target as I reported in September, but we'd narrow the gap from the last time we met. This data is from the end of September, and we were 133 test cases below our target, But you can see on this next slide, this is more of a weekly last 3 months. So it takes us 2 months into October. We had already narrowed the gap to 105. And as of today, I'm happy to report we have passed our 3,000th test script. We're up to 3,026 past test scripts, and we're only 33 off our target. So we've already made up most of that ground. This next slide is the defect reporting slide. It shows similar to the last time where our defects were trending approximately 19% higher than we expected. The good news is that we've executed nearly 95% of all the scripts in SIT. So we've exposed most of the defects. We only have about 5% left of the scripts to execute. And so we do expect this to flatten out over the next couple of months. But it's important to note that we continue to resolve our defects timely in each stream and pass the test cases at a high rate. The orange line at the bottom indicates the critical and high defects that relate to unpassed SIT test cases. Again, this line remains fairly steady and has decreased since the last time we met. This kind of blown up 3-month view shows that decrease. Those are all good signs as well with the outstanding defects. And then lastly is our overall view of outstanding defects. You see last time we had reported an uptick. We're reporting another decrease in that, bless you. As this captures not only application defects, but data conversion, interface, batch testing. The majority of those 358 remaining defects are scheduled to be tested throughout our Stream 6 of SIT testing over this next couple of months. So moving into UAT, I'm happy to report we did have a successful kickoff of user acceptance testing on October the 1st. The data samples were a little too small to display a metric for this meeting, but we have some UAT by the number stats to share with you. This first slide shows the involvement and preparations by the UAT team. We have 50 test case writers from 18 functional areas across our business divisions. And these individuals have completed documentation at the time of this reporting, 307 test cases, but we're up to 340. Of the total of around 440-ish business scenarios. That number can fluctuate from time to time. So we have about 100 remaining to prepare. This next slide shows our progress. So that you can see the actual successes, and it would not be a complete picture without showing the failures as well. I want to spend a minute to explain that and what a failed test case means in just a minute. But before I do that, I did want to share that as of today, we're at 78 passed test scripts, not 53, and 57 failed. And we have been trending above our expected pass rates as well. So in January, I'll actually show you a metric that compares that. So just providing some perspective on these test cases, the shortest test script we passed was 4 steps. The largest test script we passed so far is 167 steps. The average of the 78 we have passed is about 45 steps. We do have a test script that has 43 steps in it. That's upcoming, probably looming over some of our testers' heads coming up soon. As part of UAT, we're running like a production environment. So we run batch jobs like weekly roll. And last week, we just hit a huge milestone. We ran our first monthly payroll, which is the payment of retirement benefits. So that roll had 415,000 benefit recipients in it with $1.5 billion accounted for in there. It ran smoothly. A lot of our test cases require that to build off of their test steps. So great accomplishment by the UAT team. I'm going to call them out in just a minute, but I wanted to mention the failed test cases. So A test is failed when a tester comes upon an issue in any step of that test script. They record that issue. It goes through a robust triage process to determine the root cause of that issue. If it's a true functionality issue, that goes back to the developer to fix and redeploy to the UAT environment for us to retest that script. That script will remain in this failed status until we re-execute it. Even though the issue may be fixed, we haven't re-executed, it stays as failed. Digging into the data a little bit, approximately 1/3 of the issues we identify are not related to the functionality. It can be a training issue with the tester, data, technical related issue that impacts the test case throughput. And those are resolved, communicated back to the tester, and the test cases are re-executed, but still show as a failure. So I say all that because I want to be transparent by sharing the faileds, but also reduce any concerns when that failed number is shared, and to focus more on the past test cases being on track and the resolution time on issues are resolved timely. And our experience so far has been we've been on track with both of those. This last UAT slide reflects our test cases progress across our 9 primary business areas. I wanted to show this view to illustrate we are testing across all business areas, not saving any one business function to the end. Eventually, this view will account for all 440 UAT test cases as they are completed or scheduled for execution. This shows the past test cases in green, faileds in red, in progress in blue, and those that are not yet run in gray. And while this data was captured a few weeks ago, to date, as of today, we have passed at least one test case. There's now green in every one of those primary business areas. So I think you can see the level of work that's gone on in our UAT planning, prep, and now execution. I'd like to just take a minute to recognize a few of our UAT team members in the audience today. We wanted to bring them in now because the next 6 months are going to be very busy for them, and they may not even have time to step down to the boardroom. So today we have our UAT leadership team and our support team in the back here. If you guys would stand, the 4 and Jen. Many of our test writers and executors, test managers, and data team members who help prepare data for our test scenarios are tuning in online today. Truly a group effort. I appreciate all the hard work they're doing to make this phase go well. So we're moving along.
Yay.
So last month, I highlighted our transformation readiness teams. There was 4 teams I highlighted: change management, learning and development, business process readiness, and business transition teams. This slide actually provides a timeline of activities that they're working on. So I wanted to share this. Currently, we're in user acceptance testing, do a lot of communication around that. Our change management team is doing business area assessments. So they're going out to each of those core business areas, measuring their awareness and their knowledge, their desire to accept this new system, bringing back solutions, and building those into our change management plans. Our training team, learning and development team, is busy creating the modules for training, how we're going to train our end user staff, and preparing to train the trainers. The trainers from each of the designated business areas will be trained. And then moving over to next year, those individuals will actually be conducting that staff training. That can be in-person training, it can be on-the-job training, it can be web-based training modules that we've built to help support the staff. And then later in 2025, around August, September, we'll be doing a soft launch. So the soft launch will be done with UAT. We'll have several readiness checkpoints to say, yes, we're ready to to have the system go into soft launch. This is actually a quasi-production environment. So once we're there, we're ready to roll, but we have 2 months to run production-like scenarios in there. Take real retirement applications, run them through, run batch jobs, and actually flush out any issues that might occur at go live, and we'll get those taken care of before we launch. So it's a real luxury to have this period, and we're on track to actually have that 2 months of soft launch. So excited about that. And then as we approach fall of 2025, we will be into our cutover activities. So those pre-cutover activities that are like get all the work as much as we can in before we have to shut off the system. Then we go into cutover, where it's kind of that blackout period of the system. And then we will resume and have those post-cutover activities, getting all that work that was queued up for that cutover period of time, get those put in, start communicating with our members who maybe couldn't get the information they needed during that cutover window, and be live. So teams are working hard on those transition processes. So just ending with our budget, this is updated with all our expenditures as of August 31st. We are, I think the most important thing here, all the numbers, but we're on track with our spending. So we're right on plan. We have the remaining budget available of $129 million to get us to go live. And then we have that additional $104 million approved that'll take us to post-implementation, stabilization, maintenance, and operations to keep us going through 26, 27. We also had our quarterly meeting with Department of Finance last week. We do that per the contract, per the legislative direction, and had a great meeting with them, as we do every quarter, provided them project status updates and answered questions, and I think had a positive interaction as we typically do. So with that ends my presentation. I did want to mention too, our Sagitech partners have been great. Our project manager and assistant project manager are in the audience. We keep the collaboration going, Karen and Rahul. So we really appreciate their partnership and how it's been going. So happy to either take any questions or pass it to Chris and then take any questions.
How about we pass it to Chris, and then we'll do, we have a couple people in the queue, but maybe Chris will answer some of the questions.
Okay. Good morning, Chris Caboti with Guidehouse and our independent oversight update. As Anthony mentioned, there's a lot going on there, and what you saw from him are, again, the metrics and the numbers and how things are progressing. And we've spent the majority of our time, as we always do, digging in under that to understand what the processes are looking like, what numbers are feeding the numbers. So if you see a top line, what's it really mean, and does it mean that we're on track? And the nice thing is, at this point in time, fall 2025 is the assumed go live date. It's in the schedule. All of our assessments are based on, are we going to hit that go live date? So when I come to the board, my perspective is there anything that's going to prevent us from that, or are there any significant material risks that are going to potentially impact our ability to go live in the fall? Are we going to need more money? That's another one, obviously, that we take a look at. So it's from that lens now. Earlier in the project, it was almost month by month. Are we on track this month? Are we on track next month? Now it's really, are we getting where we need to get to go live? So again, it's kind of a luxury to be able to do that. And so I can move that forward for you there. The key pieces that we're looking at, obviously, system integration testing, as Anthony talked about. There's a lot of numbers underneath there. So there's the defects, there's the execution of the tests, there's the business teams validating the test results. All of those things are going into that. And so some of the things that we've seen in there is the defect count. There's a lot of, that they've gone through, and there's some that still remain to be resolved. The main thing from our perspective is, what are they? From a qualitative analysis perspective, are the defects clustered in business areas where we have concerns around functionality that may prevent us from wanting to go live? We haven't seen any of that recently, so we're comfortable with how that looks. does Sagitech, the vendor, have the ability to clear those defects from our perspective? Do we think they can get through those? They've cleared since July, I believe, around 7,000 defects. That's a big number in that amount of time. So we've seen them be able to ramp up. And as Anthony mentioned, just in that gap between when we presented the item to today, there's been a lot of progress made there. I know I'm the risk management consultant here, basically. It's saying, so again, I've expressed cautious optimism in the past, but I can also, every now and then I get to say some positive things. So I want to get that out there around the idea of around why I'm feeling, again, confident at this point in time is because of those things that we've seen. The payroll run obviously was huge. And so again, we're feeling better from that perspective. From UAT, again, we don't have a lot of data because we just started a little bit ago, but from what we have seen, the execution has been happening as planned or faster. There's still test cases to write, and those teams have a lot of work to do concurrently. So we are watching capacity because they're going to have a lot of different things to do at the same time. So again, we're watching how that's going. But from the execution side, from the defects that Anthony talked about, we're looking at those and making sure that, again, there's nothing there that gives us pause as to whether we're going to make it. And again, we haven't seen that. So I think those are all positive things. Process-wise, the big ones, there are things in those activities that can cause problems down the road. And so we've talked about setting up solid triage processes for Anthony called them issues, the things that you find in UAT. You might have, they might start to stack up and you have discrepancies around whether those need to be fixed or not. And I think those processes are working well so far. We've seen, again, that they've put those in place prior to actually executing. So it's working well. The vendors are collaborating very well. We're continuing to see, again, positive results in that area. And then on the schedule management side, the project schedule itself is being brought into individual work stream conversations. So they're talking about where the activities for those are from a schedule perspective. Some are behind, some are ahead. Really talking about, do we need to add resources here? Do we need to reprioritize? So they're actually looking at it from that schedule perspective, which is positive as well. So again, overall, we don't see anything that causes us to have concern about go live at this point. We think the fall date's definitely doable. As long as we keep focusing on the right things and keep prioritizing the right things, I think we'll be there. So we'll continue to monitor, and I'll bring anything to the board's attention as soon as we see it.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, Karen.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the report. I'm always glad to hear all this information, and it's going well, and it gives me pleasure that people are working so hard, and you've done it for so long, and I so appreciate all the morale it seems like just the morale has been lifted so much off of your shoulders and everything, and it's kind of, I feel comfortable that we're at a good place. So knowing all that, and when Anthony said that the go live date was in September or the fall, it started me thinking, because as a new recipient of the SBMA funds, that happens in October. And so with that happening, and with the incentive payments that usually go out during that time, those considerations have been monitored and have been, yes? Yes, okay, good.
Actually, this is just not only that one, but we have a very thought out plan. We are considering all the aspects of.
Okay.
And then what if scenario, if something happened, then what the next one?
Right, okay. So I just wanted to make sure, and I'm sure you were doing it, but I just kind of wanted to be on record that I've been asking about it.
Comfort for you, I think maybe we can share offline, what the steps we are taking to mitigate.
Okay, good. Thank you. And then I really appreciate being able to ask questions offline to the different, Chris and Anthony and Ashish, of all the just little things that I worry about, but then hopefully that your worries are not keeping you up too much at night. So thank you very much.
We're looking forward to your email, every time, whenever we post it.
Thank you.
And I just want to remind the board too that finance and myself have been meeting with the team regularly to keep track between meetings. So we will definitely let everyone know if anything changes, but so far so good. I couldn't be happier. Thank you.
And fail fast and fail often is not.
Right?
We'll leave that to the innovation team for their motto. We're not going to adopt that motto.
I'm like, I see Anthony giving us new stickers.
Yeah.
Execute.
Yes.
Execute.
Yeah. Very
Good
nice.
one.
Do not fail.
Do not fail.
No, I have a good discussion with the. I'm a good. I'm a good cop and bad cop. You know, I have a discussion every week with the vendor as well as our team. You know, so thank you.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, seeing no further questions, are there any public comments on item number 9?
There are no public comments for item number 9.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 10, which is informational. So be sure you read item number 10. Item 11 is the consent agenda, and I believe I need to read for audits, right? Okay. On behalf of the Audits and Risk Management Committee, I would like to move for us to accept the independent auditor's report for the year ended June 30th, 2024. I'm going to read you 6 things. Number 2, the auditor's communication to those charged with governance. Item number 3, the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters for the CalSTRS independent financial statement auditor reports for the year ended June 30th, 2024. There's an A and a B here. A, the basic financial statements, required supplementary information and other supplementary information, and B, other pension information. Total of 6 reports. The Audits and Risk Management Committee also moves to adopt the resolution accepting the submission of the independent auditor's report on the CalSTRS basic financial statements, required supplementary information, and other supplementary information for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024. You have all of that in your materials, so if you have any questions, I'm just reminding you what we all heard. And with that, I believe we need to move to move the consent agenda.
So,
Okay, do we roll call? Yes.
Sure. Ms. Peralt?
Aye.
Ms. Gallegos?
Aye.
Mr. Keeley?
Aye.
Mr. Tang?
Aye.
Ms. Yamamoto?
aye.
Ms. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Gunning?
Aye.
Mr. Rufino?
Yes.
Mr. Garfinkel?
Aye.
Chairperson Bradford?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, the rest we have informational items. Does anyone have questions on 12, 13? I don't think we had any informational items. And then 14, Madam CEO, is there anything you want to bring to our attention?
Just we will be bringing the first reading of the strategic plan. You heard a lot about it throughout the day. We'll have a lot of content to go over and get feedback because we're going to be finalizing it for hopefully adoption in March. If not, we'll come back in May, but it'll be the first glance at that. We're still wrapping up the content development.
Great. Okay, we actually do have, I don't know, a statement from the public. I guess CalRTA has a presentation for us before we break. We're probably going to need to go take a picture.
Thank you again. I'm back. And good morning. You know, my name is Susie Dixon. I'm the president of CalRTA, and it's always a pleasure to come here annually and present you with a check of our volunteer, equivalent to our volunteer hours. As you know, teachers never stop giving. We continue to give back to society. And our members in CalRTA, as well as other organizations, really take volunteerism in our heart. And so we tend to track our volunteer hours because they were teachers. They've got to have it logged down. So we wanted to make sure everyone understands, not only do we give back to the community in our time, but because of this amazing pension, we give back to the community with our money. Our pensions have sustained our economies through difficult times and will continue to. So thank you, all of you, for that. I'm not even reading the script, you can tell. I do want to note that, as you know, this is our 95th year. And thank you, Cassandra, for that amazing video that you had at our convention last spring and for attending, because it really means a lot when our members can see the real people behind this amazing organization. As you know, we also develop other organizations. AARP was founded by one of our members in CalRTA. I remind them of that every time I meet with them. So today, it is with great pleasure on behalf of CalRTA that we present you with this check equivalent to our members' organizational time of $40,825,441. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's an impressive number.
That's very good.
Cold hard cash.
Right? Are there any further public comments for us today?
We do have one caller on the line. And he'll have a 3-minute timer. Michael, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to make a public comment. You have a copy of my letter that was delivered to Chair Bradford dated 16 September, and it's meant to accompany my statement today. I hope that you have or will read it. It's about the failure of STRS and the Comptroller's Office to manage my case of stolen pension checks and fraud. Briefly, and in essence, this is what happened. By June 2024, pension checks were stolen from my neighborhood mailbox on 1 July. I reported this theft by phone to STRS on 2 July. Several days were allowed to pass without the Comptroller's Office being notified of this theft. The check was subsequently doctored with a phony name and address and cashed by thieves on 5 July. Because I was given erroneous information from STRS when I first reported the theft, and because STRS mishandled my report, the check was not canceled by the Comptroller's Office, and the criminals were given time to carry out their fraud. Now I was just notified that my case was expedited by the Comptroller's Office, and a replacement check is in the mail. I am grateful for this extraordinary attention given to my situation, though it is too long overdue. But I was not asking for special treatment when I reported this incident to STRS over 5 months ago. I was asking STRS to do something that would prevent fraud. In this respect, STRS failed. A preventable crime was perpetrated, victimizing both the taxpayer and myself. Of course, I have since been told that I should use automatic deposit to avoid another theft of my mail. Thank you for that advice. Here's my advice to you. Institute an effective protocol with the Comptroller's Office to deal with reports of theft and fraud. Then, train your staff to handle reports of theft and fraud in a friendly, timely, and professional manner that does not disrespect your clients. The Comptroller's Office has a rep who sits on this board. Please talk to one another. A little teamwork might save the taxpayer some money and save your clients some financial hardship. STRS let me down when I needed your help. STRS passed the buck to another state agency when I needed timely and accurate guidance about what I needed to do when my checks were stolen. STRS managers exhibited a careless, complacent, and patronizing attitude when urgency and speed were required. So let me ask, is this the best you can do? Thank you for the opportunity to make public comment.
Thank you for your comment. That is the conclusion of public comments for this item.
I believe Ms. Gallegos would like to comment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Cruz-Garate. I just wanted to say on behalf of the controller, we really appreciate you bringing this matter to our attention, and we realize that a process for unique situations like this are warranted, but we do appreciate you commenting today and bringing it to our attention.
I'm sorry, Ger, did you say there's no further comments?
There's no further comments.
Sorry. Okay. With that, we will be having lunch until 1:10, and then we will be having closed session. So that gives everyone the afternoon off if you're a stakeholder.